It was a calm, sunny Saturday afternoon in the quaint town of Riverton. Families strolled along the picturesque streets, children laughed as they played in the park, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted from the local bakery. Amid this idyllic scene, an interracial couple, Maya and Daniel, walked hand in hand through the town square. Maya, an eloquent black woman with a natural air of confidence, and Daniel, a kind-hearted white man, radiated warmth and joy. As they passed the flower shop, they stopped to admire the vibrant arrangements. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Everly, greeted them with a smile and exchanged pleasantries. But not everyone in Riverton shared Mrs. Everly's open-mindedness. "We appreciate your continuous support always. As we continue with this story, let us know where you are watching from in the comment section, and please hit the subscribe button. Do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories. Thank you." Karen Winters, a longtime white resident with a reputation for meddling in others' affairs, sat on a bench nearby, sipping her iced coffee. Her sharp gaze fixated on Maya and Daniel. She adjusted her oversized sunglasses and leaned into her phone, loudly complaining to her friend about the audacity of people making a spectacle of themselves. Some people thought they could do anything they wanted, without consideration for others. She glanced at Maya and Daniel, shaking her head dramatically, her words becoming sharper as she tried to draw attention from nearby park-goers. Her voice dripped with contempt. She vented her disdain to her friend, pointing out the interracial couple with exaggerated annoyance. As her complaints failed to garner the validation she expected, her agitation escalated. When she noticed bystanders dismissing her remarks or giving her disapproving glances, Karen felt a need to assert control and restore order. Maya, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, leaned into Daniel's shoulder, visibly trying to ignore Karen's glares. Despite her role as the town's new mayor, Maya had chosen to keep a low profile while off duty, preferring to focus on connecting with the community in a more personal way. She had only recently been elected, and many of the town's residents, including Karen, were still unfamiliar with her appearance outside of formal settings. "They're ruining the charm of this town," Karen muttered to herself. Fueled by a warped sense of authority, Karen convinced herself that Maya and Daniel were causing a public disturbance. She whipped out her phone, dialing 911 with exaggerated urgency, fabricating a scenario that painted the couple as problematic. "There's a suspicious couple loitering in the square. They don't look like they belong here," Karen voiced. Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Maya and Daniel, who were now chatting with a few locals, noticed the commotion. Karen's call wasn't about genuine concern but about asserting dominance over a situation she felt was spiraling out of her control, a misguided attempt to enforce her biased worldview. Karen approached the officers with exaggerated concern, pointing in their direction. "That's them," she said. "They've been acting suspiciously. She in particular is causing a disturbance. Can you do something about this, officers? I'm just looking out for the safety of our community." The officers glanced at Maya and Daniel, who were clearly sitting calmly, minding their own business. Despite their initial hesitation, Karen's insistence pushed for the couple to be approached. The officers walked toward Maya and Daniel, their expressions cautious but neutral. One officer, Officer Reed, spoke politely but firmly. "Excuse me, folks. We've received a call about suspicious activity. Can we ask what you're doing here?" Daniel frowned, his grip on Maya's hand tightening. "We're just enjoying our afternoon." "Is there a problem, officers?" Maya, ever composed, added, "Officer, we live in this town. Is there a specific reason we're being approached?" Karen interjected before the officers could respond. "They're always causing trouble," she said. "You've seen the news. These situations can escalate. Better safe than sorry." Meanwhile, Karen is someone who avoids engaging with civic matters, rarely pays attention to local news, and doesn't participate in town hall meetings or other community events. This explains why she wouldn't recognize Maya as the mayor, especially since Maya had only recently taken office. Although, Karen and Maya had crossed paths few months before now. They had bumped into each other at a store, where Maya introduced herself, and Karen also did same. Maya hasn't become the mayor at the time. Maya's eyes narrowed. She turned to Karen. We're not strangers here, Mrs. Winters. We've crossed paths before. Karen faltered for a moment, but quickly recovered. Well, I'm just doing my civic duty. People need to feel safe. Before the situation could escalate further, a crowd began to gather. Some recognized Maya and Daniel and whispered among themselves. A young woman named Clara, who worked at the library and has heard the conversations, stepped forward. Officer, this is Maya Johnson. She's no stranger here. Officer Reed's brows furrowed. Maya Johnson? As in Mayor Maya Johnson? The other officer also looked stunned. Karen's face drained of color. What? She stammered. That can't be right. Maya pulled a small leather folder from her bag and handed it to Officer Reed. Inside was her identification and proof of her position. Officer, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Maya Thompson, the mayor of this town. And I'd like to know why my husband and I are being approached so aggressively for sitting peacefully in a public park. Officer Reed glanced at it and then at Maya. He froze, his face going pale as he registered the name and glanced at the ID. Stammering, he muttered an apology, but the damage had been done. By now, a small crowd had gathered, many pulling out their phones to record the incident. My apologies, Mayor Johnson. I wasn't aware, the officer said. Meanwhile, Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, stood rooted in shock. You're the mayor? She managed to sputter, the realization dawning far too late. Maya nodded. Yes, I am. And you just called the police on your mayor for walking in her own town. This kind of behavior, both from you and the officer, is unacceptable in the community I represent. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Karen's embarrassment was palpable. I didn't know, she sputtered. I just thought. Maya's voice was steady but firm. You thought wrong. And your assumptions could have led to a very different outcome. This kind of behavior divides communities. Karen turned to leave, but Maya stopped her. Not so fast, Mrs. Winters. I think you owe this town an apology. The tension in the air was palpable. Karen's earlier tirade had already been recorded by several bystanders, and the murmurs of disapproval from the onlookers grew louder. Karen hesitated but, under the weight of the crowd's disapproving stares, muttered a weak apology. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Maya stepped forward. Let's be clear. It's not just about this moment. It's about recognizing our biases and choosing to do better. Riverton is a community for everyone, and I won't stand for division. Her voice calm yet commanding. Karen, your actions today reflect a mindset that this town has worked hard to move past. But change doesn't happen overnight. I'm here to ensure that everyone, regardless of who they are, feels safe and respected in this community. Karen's face flushed as she stammered, I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Maya raised a hand, silencing her. Ignorance is not an excuse, and neither is fear. This could have ended differently, but today, we have the chance to learn and grow. She turned to the officers. Ensure that this incident is documented and that everyone understands the severity of such baseless accusations. The officers nodded, their expressions serious. Karen, realizing the gravity of her actions, broke into tears. I'm sorry, she whispered, though the sincerity of her apology was questionable. Maya didn't respond, but instead turned to embrace Daniel, who stood proudly beside her. We won't let fear or prejudice define us, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The crowd erupted in applause. Their support for Maya evident. Daniel squeezed Maya's hand, holding her tightly as they walked away, pride shining in his eyes. Later that evening, Maya and Daniel sat on their porch, reflecting on the day. Do you think she'll change? Daniel asked. Maya sighed. People can change if they're willing to look in the mirror. Time will tell. Across town, Karen sat alone in her dimly lit living room. The weight of her actions pressed heavily on her. For the first time, she questioned her assumptions and what had driven her to act the way she did. The next week, Riverton's town square buzzed with activity as people gathered for a community event organized by Mayor Johnson. Maya spoke passionately about unity and understanding, her words resonating deeply. She used the opportunity of this event to address the incident and announced a new initiative, Unity Through Understanding, a community-driven program aimed at fostering empathy, education, and inclusivity. Among the attendees was Karen, who quietly listened from the back. Even though she hadn't been active in community events such as this, she was personally invited by Mayor Johnson. As the event ended, Karen approached Maya. "Mayor Johnson," she began hesitantly. I wanted to thank you for inviting me and for what you said. It's given me a lot to think about." Maya smiled warmly. "It's never too late to learn, Mrs. Winters. Change starts with a single step." Karen nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Riverton, once marred by division, began to heal, one conversation at a time. This didn't end with Karen's public humiliation, it was the beginning of a community's transformation. Anytime Maya and Daniel walked hand in hand through the streets of their town, they knew that while prejudice still lingered, they had planted a seed of change. Karen, on the other hand, faced widespread backlash as the video of her behavior went viral. Over time, she began attending diversity and empathy workshops, driven as much by social pressure as a need to find redemption. Maya's leadership and Daniel's unwavering support set an example for their town, a reminder that love and respect, when met with courage, can overcome even the most deep-rooted prejudice. And Karen? She would carry the lessons of that day forever, her ignorance a painful teacher, her actions a stark reminder of the change still needed. What do you think about Karen's behavior? Share your thoughts in the comments section. If you appreciate this story, please like and share with your family and friends, and do not forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories.